Welcome to the Such a Woman podcast. I am your host, Dale Pasco, and over here we like to explore womanhood and femininity through the lens of faith. If it is your desire to become the woman of your dreams and to glorify God at the same time, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on your bell notifications to know when I upload weekly. Before we even get into the topic at hand, I want to thank everyone who has subscribed, shared, commented, everything. Y'all went crazy on the last video and I greatly appreciate every single one of you. I let you all know that my goal was to hit 500 subscribers before the end of this month, and by the time you watch this video, you will probably see that I have met that goal and most likely exceeded that goal. So I want to thank you all again because I am so excited to see that thing hit 500 and to watch this channel expand. Share some things with me in the comments that you want to learn about womanhood, faith, being productive, and marriage and things of that nature, and we will just jump into everything because I want to continue creating content that provides more value to your life. Now let's get into this topic at hand. As women, we go through so many different changes, especially with our bodies. We get stretch marks, we lose weight, we gain weight, we have children, our emotions can be all over the place sometimes. We have so many different types of feelings. We crave intimacy, we crave relationship. There's so much to us, and when we find that we're going through so many different changes, it can be tough for us to allow ourselves to be vulnerable with our husbands because sometimes we don't know how to give the language to what it is that we're going through, what we're experiencing, or even what we're seeing in the mirror. As a result of this language barrier that can happen in our marriage, we can find that these outside conversations find their way into our bedroom, and that is probably one of the worst places to not be able to communicate. So today I really want to help you let your guard down and allow yourself to find yourself in a new place of trust with your husband so that you can be vulnerable with him in your bedroom and have fun and bring that spark back to that place that is supposed to be explored and full of intimacy. First things first, intimacy doesn't only have to do with the physical. Intimacy has a lot to do with the emotional as well, especially for us as women. When we know and trust that we're able to connect with our husbands emotionally, that allows us to know that we are safe and that we are free to express without any type of judgment, which leads to vulnerability. And when we're able to be vulnerable in other situations, especially with our communication, we will find we don't have a hard time communicating in the bedroom. I want you to think about a time that you were attempting to be intimate with your spouse, but because the day didn't go as planned, maybe he wasn't as touchy as you had desired, or y'all didn't spend enough time together, or maybe you guys got into like a little spat, you were not able to push past that mental blockage and have a great connection with your husband in the bedroom. Now I want you to think about a time that there were fireworks, everything was just perfect. Every time he touched you, you felt great. It felt like things were just sparking throughout your body, butterflies, you were giddy, happy, sweating, all of that. It's most likely that your day with your spouse was grand. He probably communicated well with you and you with him. There was probably a lot of touching, a lot of talking. He just knew how to fill that emotional tank. And as women, sometimes our emotional tank isn't just built through kind words, but it's built through the touching, the acts of service, the listening. It's built through so many different things. So as you recant some of those memories, I really want you to take into consideration what was needed for you to be vulnerable and what was a blockage when it came to building intimacy in the bedroom with your husband. We're going to be intentional with making sure we communicate effectively and begin breaking down these barriers, which takes me to the importance of communication. Communication is key when it comes to establishing a greater level of intimacy with your spouse. If you don't know the language and the words that you should use when addressing certain things, if you don't feel safe, if you believe that your husband won't hear you, if you don't want to hear your husband, it is going to be extremely hard for you all to reach another level of intimacy. I'm pretty sure most of us can understand when it comes to the bedroom, bedroom, we should be able to communicate about what's going on. So if for any reason there's something that you don't like that's going on in the bedroom, you should be able to go to your husband and say, babe, when we are doing this, my body feels like this and it really is not pleasurable to me. Or it reminds me of a situation that I experienced in the past and I don't like that feeling. Or I really do like when you do this. There are so many women who are afraid to open up with their husbands, not even just about the bad things, but the good things. I was in that space before where it was hard for me to tell my husband, hey, I like when you do this, or that felt really good. And it would feel like something's in my throat that was stopping me from just sharing something positive about what we experienced together. And I realized I really didn't feel comfortable being that intimate with someone. It's possible that you experienced some type of abuse in a bedroom before, or maybe you were sexual with someone before you got married, and those situations tainted what intimacy was to you. Remember, intimacy is not just about the physical. However, many of us have been taught that building intimacy is through sex, and that's not the case. So when you look at these relationships that you had in the past or experiences that you unfortunately went through, it really can taint the way intimacy is showing up in your marriage. Being able to talk to your husband and say, listen, I experienced this at the age of 4, and when I hear you breathing this way or when I hear you saying these things, it really feels uncomfortable. And I know that you are not my abuser. I know that you are not the person who put their hands on me or mishandled my body. I am asking though that you understand in this moment so that we're able to get through this. Give me just a moment to process this so that I'm able to freely give myself to you without any hindrances. If it's something else that you want to address when it comes to good things, you should be able to say, babe, that felt really good. And if you can't, why not? What is the hindrance? Do the googly eyes make you feel uncomfortable? Do the kisses make you feel uncomfortable? When you're touched, do you feel uncomfortable? When you hear somebody calling you pet names, does it bring back a certain memory? Like, what's really going on? That is something that you're going to want to explore, because you don't want that to be a hindrance in your marriage. I've been in a place before where it's like me and my husband were about to do something, or he would say something and I'd be like, ooh, that feels really weird. Not because it was happening with him or because of the way he did it. It was because I didn't unlock that level of intimacy within myself. And one of the greatest ways to unlock intimacy is to spend time with the Father. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable with God, it will show up in your entire life. And when you're married, it will show up in your bedroom. One thing to remember is that connecting with your husband in the bedroom is an act of worship. And the Lord loves when we worship with our spouse. Unfortunately, some people still have like a weird dichotomy in their mind when it comes to connecting with their spouses in their bedroom. I was reading 2 articles, and one article was saying how there was a man and a woman who were married, and they both decided to not have sex until years and years and years down the line when they felt like God would give them the go ahead, although they were already married. And they were doing this because they felt like they were defiling their marriage, but the Bible says that the marriage bed is undefiled. And so that just goes to show how the enemy will try to play with your head or make you feel like holiness is abstaining, but you're not supposed to abstain in marriage, because we were called to be fruitful and to multiply in many ways, but one of them, childbearing and connecting with our spouse, taking what our husband gives and multiplying that thing. And then I heard another relationship where they were saying that in their marriage, they only do the missionary position. And they did that because they felt like it was the holiest and everything else is for whores and stuff like that, which is just crazy and it's mind blowing, because there's so many different things that you can try. But when your mind is bound to thinking that something is unholy, or you don't have the right concept of what marriage really is and what it means to the Father, you will follow some crazy traditions, some rules, and it's really taking the pleasure out of your marriage. So when it comes to your marriage, you should be able to address these things and say, hey babe, I want to try this position. I want to do this with you. Keep it between you and your spouse, but don't be afraid of exploring different things, because it's okay. Sex is supposed to be enjoyable. It's supposed to be pleasurable. It's supposed to be fun. This brings me to this. I remember being at an event and this young lady asked a question about sex with her husband. And she mentioned that it's not pleasurable to her all the time because her husband always wants to do it. He'll wake her up and in times where he knows she's totally exhausted. He didn't understand no. And it was just so many different things that made it sound like she was being abused in her marriage with her husband in their bedroom. And so many women in that room were saying, well, if your husband wants it this way, or if he wants to do it at this time, do not deny your husband. And I wasn't over the event, so I couldn't really say anything, but my heart broke for her because I'm like, this lady's telling you that she's being borderline abused, and all y'all can say is you need to give it up to your husband so he doesn't cheat on you, or so he doesn't leave the house feeling like he's not being pleased, or because he's simply asking, you should always be available. But I'm here to challenge that because there are such things called boundaries. And I am a firm believer that even in marriage, some boundaries are extremely necessary. If your husband asks you for something, or if you ask him for something, and either one of you want to say no to a certain act or some type of new position or whatever, you should be able to say no, and he should be able to say no to you. Not in a way where it's abusive or, trying to be manipulative, but if your husband's extremely tired and he says, listen, babe, not right now, I'm tired, please. There's no reason you should be getting a fit. Understand and wait for tomorrow. And just like you, if your body's hurting, or if it's that time of the month and you're like, listen, this is not the time, he should not be like, okay, well, I just want to do it, so let's put a towel down. That is very inconsiderate. And intimacy doesn't begin in the bedroom. It really happens on the outskirts. It happens when we're helped. It happens when we're out on a date. It happens when your husband puts on cologne. It happens when you put on perfume. It happens when you guys are just laying next to each other. It happens in the smallest of ways. And unfortunately, the smallest things can really cut off that intimacy. So you want to make sure you are being vulnerable in communication first, so that when it comes to meeting in the bedroom, that vulnerability simply flows. So as I mentioned before, our bodies go through different changes as women. And if you've noticed that you are uncomfortable around your husband naked, or if you always feel like you need a blanket when you guys are doing something, or you need the lights off, that can be a huge hindrance to intimacy. One, because we know that most men are extremely visual, and when your husband cannot see you, he can't connect with you, that really will put a damper in his connection with you. A great way to connect is eye contact, and if the lights are off, y'all can't see. You want to address that issue. What's going on with your body to where you feel like your husband isn't worthy of seeing your body, or you're not worthy of revealing your body to your husband? Is it that when you walk around naked, your husband's like, ooh, girl, put some clothes on? Or does he make little snide remarks about how much weight you've gained? Or is he saying, I really love your body, keep walking around like that, I like to see you? If it is the previous statement, you should sit down with him and say, hey, when you say those things to me, it really hurts, and nothing in me wants to lay down with you, especially not naked, because I don't feel like you'll enjoy my body. And hopefully you have a husband that is extremely mature, that can hear you, and that will change the words he's speaking in order to uplift you. If you do have a husband that's uplifting you and you still feel like you can't be naked in front of him, that's something you need to work on, sis. It's possible that you have a bomb body, but you don't see the beauty of your body, so you have to do the work on figuring out what's going on. Also, when it comes to these different positions and things, were you told that if you do certain things with your spouse or with a man, that it makes you a hoe? And are you still struggling with those things because nobody came back and said, well, that's outside of marriage? Like did they teach you what healthy sex was? And I think, especially in the body of Christ, we do not do a good job with preparing people when it comes to like sex, right? Unfortunately, many of us had sex before marriage, and there are a lot of people who have not. But when you've been exposed to sex before marriage, man, I know I had to go through a process where I really allowed the Lord to purify everything regarding my sex life so that I was able to enjoy it with my husband. And what I mean by that is, before marriage, I was trying so many different things, saying different stuff in the bedroom, just acting crazy out in those streets, right? And then when I got married, it's like, oh my God, I don't know if this is okay. How were you having better sex then than you are in a covenant relationship where sex is actually legal? That should not be. And so the Lord took me through a process of really understanding the beauty and the sanctification of marriage and being able to consummate with my husband and what that really looked like and the sound of that. There are things you pick up from porn videos. There are positions you pick up. There are different movements and placements and words that you pick up from illegitimate sources that can really hinder your sex life when you are married. And so the Lord took me through a process of just making sure the images were gone, that my words were pure with my husband, that I was connecting to him from a pure place and not a place of what I was used to seeing on films and things of that nature. So for an example of this is maybe you're intimate with your husband and you're used to being choked while you're in the act with a man, but your husband's looking at you like, girl, I do not want to choke you. I'm your husband. I don't want to do anything to you that remotely looks like abuse. And you're like, but why not? That feels good and all this different stuff. And he's like, because you're not supposed to be choked. I don't want to slap you. I don't want to spit on you. I don't want to do any of those derogatory things to you. Why would you want that to happen? It's possible that you're still battling two different appetites when it comes to sex. So really sitting down and allowing the Lord to purify that will help you so much. And then you'll be able to better explore. And you won't have to feel like you're having, a boring time with your spouse, because now you're doing it from a pure place and y'all can still explore, still have fun, but it's not you being abused in the midst thereof. Another thing is overcoming shame and insecurities together. This is another huge thing with communication, really allowing there to be space for either one of you to share things that you may feel ashamed of or be insecure about. Maybe you experienced sexual abuse in the past and you want to go to your husband and say, hey, listen, I went through this and I really feel like I'm still carrying the weight of this thing and I don't know how to let it go. I feel disgusting. I feel like this. And allowing your husband to really take care of you in that moment. That's another level of vulnerability. Can he take care of you? Can he speak life into you? Can he address those things that you experience so that you're able to come out? Does he really walk you through another level of deliverance when it comes to your marriage? That is a form of intimacy. There have been plenty of times I was going through things and my husband took me through deliverances just because he loved me, just because he gave me a hug, just because he was there and allowed me to boo-hoo cry on his shoulder plenty of times. That is where intimacy comes in, and that is where another level of vulnerability comes in. And there have been times where I just needed a hug. I just needed him to hear me and to allow me to just lay there. And because he did that, I felt like I could share more with him. And remember, this vulnerability, this intimacy really begins outside of the bedroom before it goes into the bedroom. But because he was that place for me to be safe and to feel safe and seen and heard, I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna have some fun. But that usually came after the fact. So, really allowing yourself to share these things with him. And if he shares things with you, are you going to be a safe space for him? Because men can struggle with intimacy as well, especially if they feel like their wives are, these tough, extra masculine men. Are you a feminine woman where he feels comfortable coming to you talking about things and knowing that you're not going to use what he shares with you against him? Can he walk around naked and know that you're going to, compliment his body? Like, can he be vulnerable with you? And the last thing I'll share in this time is not to downplay the power of prayer and spiritual connection with your husband. If you struggle with intimacy and connection, communication, using your words, sharing with him things that you enjoy, don't enjoy, you better talk to the Father and be honest with him, because in doing that, he will make a way for you to have a conversation with your husband. But if you can't be vulnerable and honest with God, that means you struggle with being vulnerable and honest with yourself. And if you can't be vulnerable and honest with yourself, you're going to struggle with being vulnerable and honest with your husband. And we can think that we're being vulnerable and intimate and transparent simply because we're having sex. But think about the times that you may have, if you have had sex before, you only went so far because you knew that wasn't your forever person, and how that really wasn't the fullness of intimacy. And don't think that just because you had sex with someone here, that experience is going to be the same here, and that just because you're married, that you have just dived into intimacy and vulnerability. Being vulnerable and allowing yourself to be vulnerable requires a lot of work. It requires you do an inner work. It requires you have the tough conversations. It requires you be vocal about what you like and what you don't like. It requires that you you take care of yourself. It requires that you really just be honest and real with yourself first before you're expecting somebody else to be real and honest with you. So if you need help being vulnerable in the bedroom, here's some things that you can do. One, I would suggest possibly finding some games, sexual marriage games, and really having some time pulling cards and exploring whatever it says to do on the card, but also while trying new things, remembering each other's boundaries, putting safe words in place, however crazy y'all may or may not get, but really allowing each other to explore one another. Another thing I suggest is, of course, taking the time to pray with one another, being honest again with each other and saying, hey, this is where I need help. I don't know how to connect with you here. I want to connect further with you, but I'm afraid, I'm uncomfortable, or maybe I have desires to go extremely too far and I need you to reel me in. It's also important that you allow yourself to have fun, that you laugh during sex. There are going to be times when you're doing different positions and things with your husband and things can get a little crazy, a little weird. Don't be afraid to laugh. It's not supposed to feel like you're in this little straitjacket. You should be free and your husband should be free as well. Something else you could do is possibly get a hotel room to change the scenery for a night and do some, fun, crazy, wild things up in that room and bring it back home. Make sure it ain't nothing too crazy with other people, like I said, because no. But find some way to change things up because sometimes you just need a change of scenery. And lastly, I suggest you let your spouse know what it is that you like. And I'm not just talking about sexually, but encourage your spouse. Talk about how much you love your spouse, how much you respect your husband, how bomb he is, how great he is, and watch how his actions begin to change with you as well. You will find that you get more aroused, he gets more aroused, and when y'all get to that bedroom, it will be on and popping. It's little things like being servants outside of the bedroom allows you to serve one another in the bedroom. If you're selfish out here, you will probably be selfish in here. And the beauty of coming together in marriage is being able to serve one another, not just in doing dishes or cooking food, but especially in the bedroom as well. Because remember, this is an act of worship unto the Father. And when you serve, you are one of the greatest ones in the kingdom, right? So why not show that in the bedroom? So I really do hope that this video helped you to just look at yourself a little bit more and see what may be hindering your ability to be vulnerable with your husband, and open the door to have open communication with him in order to express things that you may like, may not like, things you want to explore or don't want to explore, or some things that y'all might just need to change up a little bit, or maybe even repent for, because maybe that's an issue as well. If you haven't already, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I would love to connect with you even further. Remember, you are her in real life, and I will talk to you next time. All right, see ya.